Releasing a new Marvel movie in the new decade, I feel couldn't come at a worse time. I think the popularity of Marvel movies and superhero films in general has really waned off. I feel the only real Marvel movies that use the Marvel name, not just the MCU, that really have been a real hit is for me is really Deadpool, Wolverine, and Spider-Man: No Way Home. And in a sense, you could probably include Guardians of the Galaxy 3, kind of. But realistically, the new Marvel movies of the new decade have really failed to deliver. Not like they're bad or any like they're just terrible, but I feel the whole formula that Marvel has used for the many other films, they've been relying on this formula, this sort of generic writing and production that I think for some people have gotten really tired of. And yes, maybe that will kind of inflict my bias when it comes to talking about a new Marvel movie. I made my points about the MCU. I am tired of the formula, but I do appreciate what the MCU has done in recent years. Like, obviously, before the new decade, I think they've released a lot of great films. Not all of them were hits, but a sense of a cinematic universe that really carried over a lot of weight and storylines to really just become something that really had something meaningful for the next film. Now I think it's more they're trying to get more individual films with different own sort of storytelling, and they kind of just play off references from other films just to bring up the hype. When most of the times when you watch the next one, it doesn't really deliver. But that's kind of what my take is. So going into Captain America: Brave New World, I didn't really go into it with really high expectations. But I finished watching the movie, and I feel like this movie is either a catch-22. I think if you're someone that really still appreciates the Marvel formula and the MCU productions as of today, even from the past, I don't think you would definitely enjoy this film. I don't think you would have any complaints about it. But if you're someone that's kind of on the boat with Marvel and you kind of have views about the formula, the production of the MCU currently, and you're still kind of curious to see how this movie differentiates itself from other MCU films, this movie, you're not going to get any of that. But there is a positive note. I did watch this movie instead of watching Chelsea play Brighton. As of the making of this video right now, they're losing 3-0. So maybe there was a good reason to watch this movie instead of watching the football. But anyways, let's talk about this film. So I want to get the good things out of the way first before kind of elaborating on other things. So I think the action is good. When the action moments do happen, I think they do deliver. And even though they do heavily use CGI, I think they actually do make it look good. Like, sometimes I've seen action and they use CGI. Like, if you look at Marvel's Sony Spider-Man universe, for example, like, it's awful. Like, this one actually looks good. And I do also appreciate, even though maybe some people might disagree, that Sam Wilson being Captain America, and now there's the new Falcon as well, they actually make those moments actually work well. And it does feel like some people are still going to be sentimental for the older characters like Steve Rogers and all that stuff. But I would still say I do appreciate the new direction that they are bringing to Captain America, like using Sam Wilson as Captain America and the new Falcon. They actually make the action work well. I would say sometimes some of the action moments do feel pretty short-lived, and they could have really at least made it, better in some aspects to actually have more meaning behind it, but I'm not going to kind of get into that sort of part. But the other one positive I do want to say is Red Hulk. I think Red Hulk is actually a very good inclusion of this movie. And the movie does use Thunderous Ross as one of the main characters for the new Captain America movie. And obviously, Thunderous Ross used to be played by William Hurt, who was the original actor who played Thunderous Ross from the previous MCU movies. Unfortunately, he wasn't in the role for this movie because he did pass away before the production of this movie. Rest in peace. So now Harrison Ford is now, portraying as him. And I think they do include his character and his perspective, good in certain ways. I do wish there was like more context and understanding of his inclusion of his character a little bit more, because now he's president of America. He's now got a treaty of the Celestial Island to protect the new metal that's more apparently stronger than vibranium, I guess. So they kind of try and create like a political side of this film, which I think is fine. I mean, many people do question it, but I thought it was fine. I didn't really see much complaints about it. But I do think they didn't really have much that they could really develop much into a story or a perspective of an understanding for a reason why things happen. But I do think they do make Thunderous Ross' character more important in this movie, and I think it was fine, even including Sam Wilson's character as well as the new Falcon. No, the new Falcon as well. So that's all I could say in terms of good things that I have for this movie. Now, I did mention about the story about this film. I do think the story is the weakest part, I'm afraid. I don't really think they really made much of an attempt to actually give a premise or a real perspective for this film. I feel like a lot of things that happen in this movie are pretty meaningless for the sake of it. So some of the things that they happen with in this film is that now Thunderous Ross is now president of America. He wants to set up a treaty for the Celestial Island to protect the new metal that's stronger than vibranium. A lot of political sides get into the argument of who controls the island or the metal, I guess. And the president of America wants to set up a treaty to set that out, I guess. But then also he also wants to reassemble the Avengers as well, with Sam Wilson being Captain America. But throughout this whole movie, they try and play off like these whole references and cliches of, you're not Steve Rogers, you'll never be Captain America, blah, blah, blah. I've heard that, line many, many times, especially if you probably watched Falcon and Winter Soldier, which was supposed to be the lead up for this movie. I guess many people would have forgotten about it. But it's just sometimes when you watch this film, you're not really engaged with many of the characters. I feel like sometimes they try and use dialogue and writing in this movie that mostly tries to build conversations and understandings with the characters, and they don't really have much motivations. Like, there is also like the main villain in this movie, and most of the time I never really look at him as the main villain, and his inclusion is very pointless. The only real thing he does is that he's trying to shift the minds or try and take control of, like, say, Thunderous Ross, who becomes the Red Hulk, and just, put messages to him of the things that he has done, and makes him angry to become the Red Hulk. And he does like these other sort of things as well, where he controls the mind and stops the heart and everything like that. I know I'm kind of spoiling it, but it's kind of like the only way I could describe it. But like, I never really felt like the main villain really hooked me at all. It was not really interesting or had really real captive motivations throughout this film. Apart from that, like, even one of the other characters, Seth Volker, who's played by Giancarlo Esposito, who is like a very talented actor. I feel like his role was a little bit wasted in this movie. There wasn't really much of a reason to include him. There was like one decent action moment where he does fight with Captain America Sam Wilson, and it was pretty decent. Like, he gets like a gun and he shoots the vehicle, and he gets like a very highly powerful revolver, and it all looked good. But it was, again, like, probably something that probably would have lasted long. The scenes probably would have lasted as long as something you would see from a YouTube short. So it was like incredibly short. So you just kind of forget and pass it on, and don't really think about these sort of things very much. But also, I feel like the main villain in this movie was very weak. Samuel Stearns, that he kind of was this someone half transformation of the gamma radiation that creates like the Hulk and Abomination. Like, he didn't really have much of an interesting backstory, or just really, he just didn't, there was no real sense of why he was really included for this movie. So I feel some of this movie was a little bit of a wasted opportunity to try and build perspective and character stories really well. But overall, I would say this isn't a bad movie by any stretch. I'm not saying this is a bad movie at all. It's probably better than at least some of the more recent Marvel movies, like the Marvels, maybe Thor: Love and Thunder, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. You know, it's better than probably some of those few movies, but I guess that's probably all opinion for that matter. I just think this movie is just very average. Now, I think at the moment this is so far the lowest rated Captain America movie. I personally would say it is. Like the other three Captain America movies are by far the better films. But obviously, this isn't like saying that this is somehow awful or bad or anything like that. I think this is certainly fine for as a Marvel MCU film. Again, if you're used to the Marvel formula and you appreciate it, there's no doubt that you will love this film and you would have no complaints. But I think certainly if you're more in this sort of boat where you like Marvel movies but you're kind of a little bit tired of the formula and you still watch new Marvel movies for curiosity's sake, you're going to really find it difficult to find many positives for this film. But yeah, that's kind of my take on Captain America Brave New World. If you have watched this movie, do let me know in the comment section what you think of this film. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you haven't already, please like, comment, subscribe. Dislike if you want to dislike. Thank you for watching. And yeah, that's about it. See you later.